At the beginning of their daughter's 8th grade year, she attempted suicide and was hospitalized. Can you imagine that your child has been experiencing this psychological distress issue and you only find out after your child attempts? Guys, up first, we turn to big news out of the Supreme Court. And it's one of those stories where it's like you almost forget how crazy things are. You move on and you're thinking about other things. And then while things are working through the system, it comes back up and you're like, wow, I forgot it was that crazy. And that happens to me with California all the time, because California is just, especially with the radical gender ideology and trans activism, it is like the gift that keeps on giving in terms of the most extreme gobbledygook ideas being embodied into policy and then embraced. And now the Supreme Court just handed down a preliminary order. So not a final complete ruling, but citing in the meantime, while the case continues to be litigated, siding against the state of California over its policies that allowed schools to secretly, basically keep secrets from parents, even if the kid at a public school was transitioning and going by different pronouns. They didn't have to tell, and they couldn't state, localities could not require them to actually tell the parents about what's going on with their child. It's turned into this parental rights and religious freedom case that's very interesting, and I think has some very lasting political ramifications for folks like Gavin Newsom. So first, here's some local reporting from KCRA 3 about the order that was just handed down.
Continue to follow other breaking news. The Supreme Court has handed down a ruling temporarily blocking a California law preventing teachers from informing parents about their students' gender expression.
Now, the state policy was intended to protect trans minors from abuse at home or rejection, but it raised questions about if parents had a right to know if their child is going through gender transition at school. California argued that students have the right to privacy about their gender expression. In an unsigned order, the court found, quote, "We conclude that the parents who seek religious exemptions are likely to succeed on the merits of their free exercise clause claim." The California order comes months after the court upheld state bans on gender identity-related health care for minors.
How is this real life? How is this a real policy that in California, teachers were keeping secret from parents that their kids had started transitioning in school and going by different pronouns? Aren't progressives and trans activists the same ones who, well, we can debate kind of the ramifications of this, always point out to us the serious mental health problems that plague young people with gender dysphoria? Yeah, and yet you're going to not tell the parents that their kid is clearly experiencing some sort of identity distress and gender dysphoria. That's a recipe for disaster. And absent any extraordinary circumstance where they're going to be abused, in which case they should already be being reported to child services, yeah, parents should know and have a right to know about key health concerns. I mean, how crazy is it? Like, I'm not a parent, but my understanding is that you need your parents to sign off for the nurse to give you an aspirin, but they can basically accommodate and accept this whole psychological condition and not tell you what's going on because it's forced outing. That's not what those words mean. And that's not remotely reasonable or compatible with parental rights, which is a foundational principle. And obviously, they do have a right to a religious right to guide their child's upbringing, and that will be litigated ultimately in court. But I would expect the parents to prevail. It's more crazy to me that anyone, as a matter of policy, ever thought this made any sense, or that somehow the mainstream LGBT activist position is actually, and has actually been, because all the groups and many Democratic politicians support this kind of policy, it has become that schools should keep a secret from parents and let kids go by different names and pronouns and whatever gender dysphoria or psychological distress that child may be experiencing. Just don't tell parents. Literally keep it a secret. That is insane, and it is a recipe for insane backlash to the LGBT community, which we're now seeing. Because like the one surefire way to get normal people to reject your cause is to come in between them and their kids. how do I even have to explain that? That seems self-obvious to me, yet these people don't get it. And of course, Gavin Newsom and other Democrats are in full-throated defense of this insane policy. We're going to get into some of that. So I will read you a little bit here from, this is from CNN. Supreme Court blocks California policies intended to protect transgender students. I just want to pause. Like, can we talk about how biased that framing is? Keeping secrets from parents about kids using pronouns and transitioning is framed as policies intended to protect transgender students. Wow. Anyway, here it is from CNN. The emergency case raised fundamental questions about whether parents have a right to know their child is going through a gender transition at school and whether districts have an obligation to respect a student's privacy wishes, particularly if disclosure could lead to abuse at home. The Supreme Court has repeatedly been asked to resolve that tension on its merits docket and has so far declined to do so. And what they're saying there is that they haven't yet reached a full decision about the merits of this case. This is a preliminary order that it will allow the parents to essentially have the policy ended in the meantime while it is litigated. So here's what's crazy to me. They're saying like, oh, they've got to protect trans students from who? From their parents? The people that care most about them in most cases. Obviously, there are some bad parents and there are some abusive parents. But I mean, schools are already mandated reporters, and the idea that they can just generally keep secrets because some parents might respond negatively if they knew their child was going through an identity crisis that, as these activists tell us, has severe mental health and safety ramifications in terms of self-harm. I'm telling you right now, if I found out a school was secretly transitioning my child using a different name, different pronouns, and not telling me, it would be a legendary crash out. Also, I would instantly, and my heart goes out to parents who couldn't afford this. I would probably be able to, and I'd find a way to, instantly unenrolling and going to a private school without those policies. Because it's like, my job and your job as a parent is to take care of your kid, and you can't do that if you literally aren't being told about massive things happening in your child's life. So, and I'm going to get to a really heartbreaking story from the actual order. One of the plaintiffs that illustrates how insane this policy is, by the way. But first, I want to give you Gavin Newsom's statement. The Sacramento Bee reports here. The ruling drew immediate criticism from LGBTQ rights advocates. The Office of California Governor Gavin Newsom said it opened students to discrimination. Here's a quote. Teachers should be focused on teaching, not forced to be gender cops, Newsom's spokesperson Marissa Saldivar said in a statement emailed to the Bee. Today's shadow docket ruling by the Supreme Court undermines student privacy and the ability to learn in a safe and supportive classroom free from discrimination based on gender identity. That doesn't even make sense because this is about parents being told what's happening with their kids. So it's not going to increase or decrease discrimination on gender identity happening in the classroom. The parents aren't in the classroom. And I'm sorry, undermines student privacy. Students don't have privacy from their parents in any sort of unlimited sense when it comes to their health. That's not a thing for 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds. Sorry, not sorry. And what does this mean? Not forced to be gender cops? What? You mean simply telling parents what's happening or not keeping it secretive? Because the case concerns some parents where they literally asked the teachers and the teachers didn't tell them. So it's not even like just saying, oh, as soon as somebody says a different pronoun, you must immediately narc to their parents. It's like these policies, some of the policies that teachers weren't allowed to tell them even if directly asked. That is not being gender cops. That is being responsible educators who understand that parents have a right and an obligation to know what's happening with their child. So now I want to turn just to show you, because I've got to be honest, guys, this is one of those things where Gavin Newsom will go on a podcast and be like, yeah, dude, those non-binary pronouns are a bit much, huh? Or like, maybe we should all just be more cool and more normal. But then it's like, meanwhile, this is his actual position on these radical policies, is fully supportive. It's like the rebrand isn't a rebrand if it's only rhetoric and smoke screening and not actual any sort of policy shift away from the radicalism that you've instituted in your state for a decade. And this stuff, if he becomes the Democratic nominee for president, is going to haunt him. It is so out of touch, so extreme, and so antagonistic to like basic American principles, like parents' rights and leaving my kids alone is one of the most easy ways to alienate and ostracize people, is to mess with their kids or make them feel like you don't respect them as parents and their rights. And I don't think you can run away from that if you're Gavin Newsom with simply like rhetorical spin or a new brand, if you've literally instituted that at the state policy level over decades now. Anyway, I want to read you this from the order because it's horrifying stuff. And I'll probably bleep the word, but it refers to self-deletion, like ending your own life. Two of the parent plaintiffs, John and Jane Poe, have religious objections to gender transitioning, but were not told by their daughter's school when she began to present as a boy and use a male name and male pronouns during her 7th grade year. How old are 7th graders? 11? 12? Wow. Anyway, in parent-teacher meetings, no one told the Poes about their daughter's transitioning or referred to her using the male name and pronouns that were used at school. So this is not like the teachers are actively lying to the parents if they aren't telling them this is happening when the parents ask like, hey, what's going on? Is she doing well in class? And then they're even using different pronouns and name than they actually use for the student. Like you're openly, intentionally deceiving and lying to the parents that you're supposed to be partnering with in the education of their child. Wow. Here's where things get horrifying, though. At the beginning of their daughter's 8th grade year, she attempted suicide and was hospitalized. Only then did her parents learn from a doctor that she had gender dysphoria and had been presenting as a boy at school. Now, thank God that attempt did not complete, and she's still with us today. But can you imagine that your child has been experiencing this psychological distress issue, this mental health issue, and the school knows about it, is enabling it, and participating in it, whether you think that's right or wrong, right? Whether you think that's the appropriate thing for the school to do, set that aside. But they're not letting you know. And you only find out after your child attempts. God, that is a moral monstrosity. I'm almost lost for words to describe how freaking crazy that is. And yet that's the policies of the state of California, and those are the policies that Gavin Newsom sends 10 toes down on. Unconscionable to me. Read you a little bit more here. Just months after being discharged, the Poe's daughter was rehospitalized and held there involuntarily because she was at risk for self. At a new school in 9th grade, she once again began identifying as a boy. Contrary to the Poe's instructions, teachers and schools officials continued to use a male name and pronouns for their daughter, citing their obligations under California state law. The Poe's have placed their daughter in therapy and obtained psychiatric care for her. So again, like this is a great example of how, from the record in this case at least, there's no indication these parents abused their child when they found out the child was trans. They may not have affirmed the identity. That's not the same thing as abuse. And that fear, it's like if you have abusive parents, report them to CPS or child services in your state, which you are obligated to do. But just the fear that they might be bad, a lot justifying keeping secrets, you just would never accept that logic. I mean, if you had a child who was exhibiting anorexia or cutting or any other sort of mental health issue, right? You would never be like, well, I can't tell the parents because what if the parents abuse them because of it? That's a very small chance of that happening. And in which case, I mean, they should obviously be referred to child services and be punished under the law and have their custody potentially taken away. But you can't just, that's true for everything. Well, I can't call this parent and tell them that their child has 3 Fs and is failing because what if the dad takes the belt off and beats the crap out of the kid? Like, no, you can't assume the worst case scenario as an excuse for not doing your job and basic due diligence and the bare minimum of actual transparency and keeping parents in the loop. I find this to be astonishing stuff. I also, whenever these issues come up, I have to talk about how much I deeply resent this kind of insanity ever being lumped in with me as a gay man. This has nothing to do with me. I don't support this. And the fact that my rights and my acceptance is tied to this kind of insanity by activist groups and Democratic politicians, and therefore is being dragged down as a result, is something I resent in a way that is so profound, it's hard to even describe, honestly. I want to read you this tweet from radical progressive state lawmaker Senator Scott Wiener, who's running for Congress for Nancy Pelosi's seat. He's claiming kids will die because of this Supreme Court order. Quote, forcing teachers to out LGBTQ students to their parents puts kids' lives at risk. Some will die. Some will get kicked out and become homeless. Some will be sent to conversion therapy. The choice to come out to one's parents belongs only to the kid and is no one else's damn business. Isn't conversion therapy banned in California? Hang on, I'm going to check that. Yep, it's been banned in California since 2012, so not off to a great start. Listen, the idea that children will die if their parents are told about what's happening with their child seems to me to be totally baseless. And in fact, the much more likely scenario that we literally saw play out in the plaintiffs in this case is that children's safety will be endangered by parents not knowing the psychological distress they're experiencing and not being able to get them care or help. I don't know. This to me seems totally insane. Demagoguery, but this guy is probably going to win and become a member of Congress and become a Democratic leader. Anyway, I think that ultimately the parents will likely succeed. Their side will likely win this case before the Supreme Court if it's ultimately heard and vindicated. But the fact that it got here, the fact that it required the legal system and an interpretation of constitutional law to strike down this policy means that in California and in these other states, lawmakers, governors, activists, politicians all thought this actually made sense and was good and important and just. And only the fail-safe of our Constitution and judicial review and the judiciary ended up blocking what's so, to me, obviously insane. That's like deeply worrying beyond this one issue, that so many people have so thoroughly lost the plot. And then they're going to wonder too. They're going to be like, why does everyone think Gavin Newsom is radical? Haven't you seen him talking on podcasts? He's just like us. He's normal. He doesn't believe in all this crazy pronoun stuff. No, sorry, not sorry. We care about results and policies and realities, not just rhetoric and smokescreen and slippery politicians doing 180s and blowing with the wind. You are accountable as an elected official for the policies in your state and the policies that you vocally support to this day. And this kind of insanity will continue to haunt the Democrats and haunt Gavin Newsom until they fully repudiate it.